Burnout rarely appears as a sudden explosion. It arrives like a quiet erosion, soft and silent, wearing away the edges of the self. Burned out souls do not begin as ashes. They begin as flames that once danced fiercely, flames that believed in their own endurance. But over time the world demands more than it returns. Expectations multiply like shadows in late evening, stretching wider than one can hold. The mind becomes a battlefield of obligations, where rest feels like an offense and ambition feels like a duty carved into bone. A burned-out soul carries a weight that is both invisible and unbearably heavy. It is the burden of constant performance, the relentless need to remain strong while cracks beneath the surface spread like thin lines on ancient porcelain. People often mistake burnout for weakness, but in truth it is born from strength. Strength used too long, too intensely, without renewal. Gradually, the heart begins whispering its exhaustion through subtle signals. A sigh that lingers longer than usual. A morning that feels heavier than the last. A dream that flickers dimmer each night. Yet the world rarely notices these early warnings. Burnout is a silent language, spoken only in the quiet corners of the soul. And so, the internal fire that once illuminated everything begins to fade. The light dims not because it lacked potential, but because it burned without pause. In this fading, a deeper question arises. How does one rediscover the warmth of being human in a world that rewards the cold machinery of endless productivity? As burnout deepens, the psyche transforms into a dimly lit room. The walls echo with thoughts that loop endlessly, like footsteps pacing across the same worn floorboards. Overthinking becomes a companion, persistent and uninvited, generating storms from whispers. The burned-out mind does not rest, it spins restless, pushing against its own limits. Joy appears only briefly, like a fragile lamp trembling in the wind, while sadness settles like a fog that refuses to lift. Motivation slips away quietly, leaving behind a hollow space where purpose once lived. Even the simplest tasks feel monumental, as if the body is moving through thick water, resisting the pull of invisible currents. Burned-out souls often speak of numbness, not the absence of feeling, but the overwhelming presence of too many feelings compressed into silence. Within this psychological dimness, identity begins to distort. Who am I when I am exhausted? Who am I when I no longer recognize the person in the mirror? The dimly lit room is not merely a metaphor, it is a lived experience. It becomes the internal landscape of anyone who has stretched themselves past their own humanity. Yet the soul, even in darkness, searches for meaning. It listens for a gentler voice beneath the noise, a reminder that the light has not died. It has simply been overshadowed. In the aftermath of burnout's quiet devastation, something unexpected emerges. Stillness. It appears not as surrender, but as a sacred pause, the kind the soul has long been begging for. This stillness is uncomfortable at first, like stepping into a room where all the noise has suddenly vanished. But within that silence lies a possibility of rebirth. The burned-out soul begins to realize that healing does not come from doing more, pushing harder, or chasing yet another impossible standard. Healing comes from acknowledging the exhaustion, honoring the wounds, and allowing rest to be more than a guilty pleasure. It becomes a replenishment, a cleansing of the inner landscape. Slowly, clarity begins to return. The mind, once stormy and cluttered, starts to organize its scattered pieces. Thoughts no longer collide with force. They unfurl gently, revealing fragile truths that were long ignored. The soul begins to remember what it once loved, not because it must, but because it wants to. In stillness, the burned-out soul discovers the courage to redefine its worth. It remembers that value is not measured by output, nor is existence validated by productivity. A new self begins to emerge, one that honors rest, embraces vulnerability, and understands that fire can return only when the ashes have been allowed to settle. Healing, then, becomes an act of reclaiming humanity. It is the slow rebuilding of inner warmth, not a spark forced into life, but a flame nurtured with tenderness. The transformation of a burned-out soul is not a dramatic rebirth. It is a gentle reawakening. The flame returns, but differently, steadier, wiser, less willing to be consumed for causes that do not nourish it. Now the fire burns with intention, not obligation. The soul learns the art of boundaries, recognizing that saying no is not selfish but self-protective. It understands that its energy is finite and its spirit is sacred. No longer does it seek validation through exhaustion. It seeks meaning through balance. The world may still demand much, but now the soul gives mindfully, allowing space for rest, joy, and renewal. Purpose becomes clearer, not the frantic chase of achievement, but a quieter alignment with what genuinely matters. The soul rediscovered its rhythm, the slow, deliberate beat of a life lived with awareness. And so the psychology of burned-out souls is not merely a study of exhaustion, but a study of rebirth. Burnout is not the end. It is an invitation to rethink the way we exist. It is the soul urging us to build lives that do not require self-sacrifice to feel meaningful. Ultimately, burned-out souls are not broken. They are transformed. They are the ones who have walked through silence, confronted their own shadows, and emerged with a fire that knows how to burn without destroying itself.